Hey, what is up, guys, and welcome back to Football Discussions. It's been a minute, and I'm excited to be back into YouTube. Obviously, there's that lull between the draft and offseason. This is a draft-based channel, but I wanted to get back into YouTube. I thought I had a ton of fun doing the draft, mock drafts and all that. So I decided to do my record predictions, team award predictions, and I'm going to start that series with the AFC West. We're going to go division by division. I'll start with the AFC West, do the NFC West, so on and so forth. I think it's going to be a super fun series for you guys. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to debate you guys in the comments on my opinions because no one's ever going to agree with anything I say. But that's the fun of it. Obviously, this offseason is going to be really different compared to coronavirus, and these record predictions are going to go out the window when the season starts. So much can happen between then and now. But let's start off with the Kansas City Chiefs. I have them going 12-4, solidifying themselves as first place in the AFC, getting that one seed. Defending Super Bowl champs, nothing's really changed for them. I think they improved their offense over the offseason. I think their defense still needs work, but it's getting better. I thought they did a decent job in the draft of addressing, the linebacker role. I think they need a little more help on that defensive line, but it's at a good place right now, and I think it's going to be enough to get the Chiefs to first place again. I have them losing to the Broncos and the Chargers once. They're in a really tough division now. I think the Broncos and the Chargers got a lot better. It's going to be really hard to win this division year in and year out for Patrick Mahomes. And I also have them losing to the Bills. And I think that Falcons game is going to be, maybe a trap game late in the season for them. So let's get into team awards. For team MVP, I have Patrick Mahomes. And if I chose an offensive player as the MVP, I chose a different player as Offensive Player of the Year. And if I chose a Defensive Player of MVP, I chose a different player for Defensive Player of the Year to avoid repetitiveness. So Team MVP is obviously Patrick Mahomes. Hard to go in an opposite direction than that. Offensive Player of the Year, I decided to go with Tyreek Hill. I really expect Tyreek to solidify himself as maybe a top 5 receiver this year. He's super talented. I love his ability after the catch. He's the fastest dude in the league. And I think that he'll really be super good for the Chiefs this year. Defensive Player of the Year, I'm expecting Chris Jones to have a big bounce back year. Not that he was terrible last year, but it was definitely some regression from that 2018 season where he was so dominant. I want him to get back into double-digit sacks, double-digit tackles for loss. I'm expecting a 15-sack season from Chris Jones. I'm really excited to see what he does for this Chiefs team, unless he gets traded, which also is a possibility because he's playing on that tag right now. So it will be fun to see what happens there. However, for right now, I have him as the Defensive Player of the Year for these Chiefs. Breakout Player of the Year, I'm going Juan Thornhill. People could argue that Thornhill broke out last year to me, or that he did break out last year, but to me, I don't think he did. He had a tremendous rookie season, don't get me wrong, but it was really underrated, and I think that he still has room to improve, and I think this is the year that he takes that next step. Obviously got injured later in the season. Hopefully he's back and healthy for the start. Fully healthy for the start of this 2020-2021 season. But I really expect big things from him. And perhaps the Chiefs could have one of the most dominant safety duos for years to come with Thornhill and Matthew. Offensive Rookie of the Year, this one is pretty easy. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Sorry, there shouldn't be a dash after Clyde's name. But I really like that pick. I thought he was the best running back in last year's class, or at least competing for that role. It was him or Jonathan Taylor for me. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was far and away the best pass catcher, far and away the best pass protector. And to me, he was probably, the 4th best rusher in that class. But as a complete back, he was super talented, and I think he fits this Chiefs offense perfectly. I think Damian Williams might start off the year by getting a lot of carries due to the fact that, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is having to learn a whole playbook virtually, and it might take him a little while to get into the system. But once he's in there, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be one of the best running backs in the NFL for years to come. So I'm super pumped for that pick. For the Chiefs. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I'm going Willie Gay Jr. I love Willie Gay out of Mississippi State. Super talented player. I think he's more of an off the ball guy than he is just a straight up pass rusher. Because I do expect him playing outside linebacker. Terrific run stopper. I think he's going to be needs to develop his pass coverage game a little more. He might even play middle linebacker for the Chiefs. We'll see how it plays out, but they really needed help at the linebacker position. I think Willie Gay is going to be the guy that's going to take this defense to the next level as he continues to progress. Up next, we have the Denver Broncos. I have them going 9-7 and making the wild card as that 6th seed. Last team to squeak into the playoffs here for the AFC. I'm pumped. for what the Broncos are doing. I think they have a lot of young talent. It's a super young core. They obviously need to gel and get better. So I'm not predicting 10, 11, 12 wins as I've seen some people predict. I think this is a very humble 9-7. They went 7-9 last year, and for them to go 9-7 this year is not insane to me. I think that is very doable. I think they have a very tough schedule. They have to play the Chiefs twice. They have to play the Chargers twice, who are going to be a tough team to compete with. They have the Patriots with Cam Newton now. So there's a lot of different teams on the schedule that have to play the NFC South. You have the Falcons, who could be good, the Saints that could be good. So a lot of stuff going on here. But I think the Denver Broncos have a chance to make the wild card this year. And it all depends on the man, Drew Lock. Can he do well with the talent that John Elway brought in? I think that's the biggest question for these Broncos. But let's look at the team awards. For team MVP, I have Courtland Sutton. I think Sutton is a bona fide stud at the wide receiver position. I think he's going to solidify himself as a top 10 receiver this year in the NFL. And you could say, hey, Sutton's going to get double teamed, and it's going to be hard for him to be terrific. You might want to look at a guy like Jerry Jeudy as being, the best wide receiver on this roster. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think since you have guys like Noah Fant running around the field, KJ Hamler, Sutton, Albert O, that they drafted, it's going to be hard to double cover Courtland Sutton. I think he's going to have a lot of one-on-one opportunities this year, and he's really going to win every single one of those like we saw him start to dominate last year. I think he's going to be far and away the team MVP, and I'm stoked for what he brings to this Broncos team. Offensive player of the year, I went Noah Fant. Noah Fant and Drew Lock already built a connection last year, and for the same reason that Sutton's going to be on one-on-ones, Noah Fant's going to be on one-on-ones, and usually due to the fact they have KJ Hamler, Albert O could be lining up if they're running a two tight end set and Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. I think Noah Fant might get a lot of opportunities versus linebackers, and that's where he's going to dominate. I expect him to have a terrific season, maybe even be in the conversation for best tight end next year. So I think the connection between him and Drew Lock is already fantastic, like I mentioned before, and that's going to really elevate Noah Fant's game. Defensive player of the year, I have Justin Simmons. Simmons is a beast, and I don't think he gets the recognition he deserves. I was, debating in my head, should I put Bradley Chubb here? I just can't, or even Von Miller here. I think those two players are going to have terrific seasons, but Justin Simmons to me is going to be fantastic. He's playing on that franchise tag, motivates him to do even better and get that long-term deal for the Broncos, or from the Broncos. So I'm pumped to see what Justin Simmons does this year. Breakout player of the year for me, it's Drew Lock. I think it's hard for him not to break out this year. Went 4-1 in the 5 games he started last year, and I expect him to be, even better this year. He's unproven. A lot of people are, saying that he's going to be like the next MVP. And then other people are saying, look, the guy played 5 games. We have really no idea what he brings to the table. I think I fall in the middle of those two categories. I think that Drew Lock showed me enough where I think that, hey, they brought in enough talent around him where he can really succeed this year. But then again, there are some question marks, which is completely true. But like I said, they brought in so much offensive talent that it's hard for Drew Lock not to be the candidate for breakout player of the year. Offensive rookie of the year, obviously Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler would be the obvious, or would be the easy choices. And I love Jerry Jeudy as much as the next guy. I thought it was the perfect pick for the Denver Broncos, and I like KJ Hamler as well. I think both those guys are going to have huge impacts on the team. When I was thinking offensive rookie of the year, who's going to have the largest impact on the Denver Broncos, I went Lloyd Cushenberry. Cushenberry was a steal in the 3rd round. I love the pick for Denver. I think that Connor McGovern leaving left a gaping hole at center, and Lloyd Cushenberry is going to fill that fantastically. I expect him to have the biggest impact on the Broncos team as a rookie because of the fact that they cannot succeed without a strong offensive line, and Lloyd Cushenberry provides that center spot for the Denver Broncos. So I think he's going to have the largest impact on the team, and that's why I went with Lloyd Cushenberry. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Michael Ojemudia. I was going to go Agam, or however you pronounce that name, the defensive tackle that they drafted, but I like Ojemudia. I think he's going to start in that, or not even start, but get reps in that slot role and maybe develop into a starter in that role. The Broncos went mostly offense this year, so I think defensive rookie of the year for this team is a moot point. But Michael Ojemudia is my number 1 candidate if I had to choose. Up next, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. I have them going 8-8 this year, missing the playoffs. I think it's going to be a tough division. They have a super tough schedule, along with the rest of the teams in this division, because they all play the same teams. And I think the main reason that I have the Chargers a game below the Broncos is because of the QB turnover. And you can see on my schedule, I have them losing to the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Bucks, the Saints, the Jets, all in their first 6 games. I think that's a 1-5 record. Yeah, that I have them at with Tyrod Taylor. I think that around that Jets game is where we see Justin Herbert come in. Dolphins, Jaguars, they'll get 2 wins there. Raiders, they can pick up a win like I have them getting, but it is a tough schedule. You have to go at the Broncos, at the Bills, and then you have to play the Cam Newton led Patriots. I think it's a super tough schedule for the Chargers, and with the QB turnover, I don't expect them to make the playoffs this year. However, I can see them making the playoffs next year. I think this team is trending in the right direction, and I'm stoked to see what they bring to the table in maybe the 2021-2022 season. But I'm looking for Justin Herbert to prove me wrong. I was labeling him a bust before the season. I think that if there was a team that he would fit in perfectly at, it is the Chargers, just because they have so many weapons around, guys like Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry. So I think Justin Herbert might have found a positive landing spot in LA, and I'm excited to see what he does. Team MVP, I have Joey Bosa. I expect Joey Bosa to have 15 plus sacks this year. He's a beast, man, really developing into something special. Offensive player of the year, I went Austin Eckler. I think Eckler is going to solidify himself as a every down back, not just a third down back. Great pass catcher. He's proved that. Now we need to see him take the step to be a good running back, and I really expect him to do so. So I'm a big fan of his, and I expect him to, like I said, just prove that he can be an every down back. Defensive player of the year, Derwin James. If I had to choose a comeback player of the year, it would also be Derwin James. Dealt with injury. I guess you wouldn't even label him a comeback because he already did come back at the end of last season. But Derwin James had an injury in the beginning of the season. It lasted towards the end of the season. So I expect him to, bounce back in a huge way for the Chargers and really, be that guy that we all know he can be as a dominant safety. Breakout player of the year is the other safety on this team, Nasir Adderley. I really want Nasir Adderley to, be successful in the NFL. He was one of my favorite players from that 2019 NFL draft class. The guy out of Delaware. He's another guy that dealt with injury last year. So if he can break out in the second season, I think it would be fantastic, and that's why he's my leading candidate for that role. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Justin Herbert. Like I said, I don't think he's going to start every game, but when he starts, I think he's going to make the most of his opportunity, win some games for the Chargers, keep them at the 500 mark, and I think that he'll be more than deserving of that award at the end of the season. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I have Kenneth Murray for this team. Kenneth's a guy that I loved out of college. He was a top 15 player to me. Obviously, went 23rd overall to the Chargers when they traded back up to get him. Kenneth Murray is a beast in the run game, and I really wanted to see him improve in the pass game this year. I think that's one of his weak points. But again, I think he's super talented, and I'm pumped to see what this young core of Chargers does this year. You have guys like Derwin. Literally everyone on this list is young and needs to get better for team awards. And I think if they can take the step this year to get even better next year, then it's going to be really fun to watch them for years to come. Finally, the Las Vegas Raiders. 6-10 is not, what I wanted to put them at, but the fact of the matter is they have a super hard schedule, and someone in this AFC West division has to lose some games. And if I had to choose, it is going to be the Raiders. It's just because of the quarterback play. I am probably the biggest Derek Carr hater out there, and I know there's guys that love Derek Carr, especially you Raiders fans. But to me, he's overrated. He makes consistently bad decisions. He doesn't take risks pairing with his bad decisions, which doesn't really make sense. But, if you watch the film, I think last year or 2 years ago, he was rated as the number one quarterback in passes that could have been intercepted. And you might say that's, a bad stat because they weren't intercepted. But if you're throwing that inaccurately consistently, which is what Derek Carr does, I know he throws for maybe some yards and touchdowns each year, and that's probably why he still has a starting job. I just don't think that he's that good, and I don't think Mariota's the answer either, which is why I have them at 6-10. Regardless, let's get into team awards. Team MVP, I have Max Crosby. Max Crosby is my favorite player from that last year's draft class for this Oakland Raiders team. I think he's a fantastic edge rusher. I think he's only going to get better this year. Fully healthy. He's no longer going to be wearing that club on his hand that he was last year. I think he's a talented pass rusher, and I think he's really going to solidify himself as, a dominant force on this defense, probably the best defensive player on this team. I'm going, 12 sacks for Max Crosby this year. I think that's a very accomplishable goal, and I expect him to accomplish that with ease. Offensive player of the year, I'm going Josh Jacobs, probably the bright spot. One of the few bright spots on this Raiders offense, besides that offensive line, which has its highlights. But Josh Jacobs proved to be a beast last year. Should have won Offensive Rookie of the Year to me. I thought he was snubbed. And I didn't think Kyler Murray was as deserving as Josh Jacobs was. And the Defensive Player of the Year, Corey Littleton. I think Littleton was a key addition for this team in free agency, and I expect him to be tremendous in that pass coverage role at the linebacker position. Breakout Player of the Year, I have Trayvon Mullen. Trayvon Mullen, to me, is a guy that has all the intangibles. I thought he developed super nicely last year and is really going to become a good starter for the Raiders. I'm a big fan of Mullins. Obviously, Mayock loves his Clemson boys, and I expect Mullen to do big things. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Henry Ruggs III. This was easy for me. I did actually consider Lynn Bowden for a minute, but I'm not really sure what the role the Raiders are going to have for him, whether it's wide receiver, running back, maybe coming in at the Wildcat quarterback spot. It's a tongue twister, say that 5 times fast. But I think that Henry Ruggs is going to have, an 800-yard season, multiple touchdowns, maybe even getting to double-digit touchdowns with his explosiveness that he brings to the table and what he can do after the catch. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I have Amik Robertson. Robertson is a fantastic corner. I think he's going to start in that slot role for the Raiders right away. The guy out of Louisiana Tech, one of my favorite players from this draft class as a whole, not even for the Raiders. So I think Amik Robertson is going to be a beast for this Vegas team. All right, guys, that's going to do it for my AFC West predictions. I hope you enjoyed this video. Shout out to the Draft Geek Instagram ran by my friend Max. He's been on the channel a couple times. We did a podcast together, our free agency podcast. He's helped me with a ton of draft stuff. So the Draft Geek on Instagram, give him a follow. He's doing his predictions right now too. So I highly suggest you check those out. But regardless, that's going to do it for this video. I love getting back into YouTube, and I hope to be posting much more consistently than I have been. Thank you guys for your support, and let's have a good season and hope that it comes around. Take it easy, guys. Peace.